This is Never Sleep Again, and you're listening to the Theremin Chronicles.
A podcast where we discuss all things sci-fi and horror. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Veronica.
And on today's episode, we'll be discussing Netflix's Archive 81 and deciding if it's a flop or not.
All right, so let's get into it.
Yeah.
So I actually just found out about the show like right before we watched it.
Right. Yeah. Me too.
I hadn't heard anything about it coming out.
Until we got a recommendation to watch it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we kind of blew through it in like a week. Less than a week.
Less than a week. We got hooked pretty fast watching this one.
Yep. So this one was pretty interesting. And some unexpected things happened there. Not knowing what I was really getting into, because I didn't even watch like a trailer or read any like synopsis or review, so I had no idea like what it was about.
I think I saw the trailer once or twice. It came up in Instagram stories, and I recognize the guy that plays Mark.
Okay.
In the series, I recognized him from, I forgot what else I saw him in, but I just, he just has he's one of those actors with one of those faces.
Yeah.
And you just recognize them instantly and everything. You're like, hey, it's that guy.
He does, yeah.
Yeah. I saw that, but for some reason, I didn't feel the need to just jump on that real quick. I think I meant to, or something, and we probably had something else to watch.
Yeah,
is what happened, which is what usually happens.
Right. Well, this show definitely took some turns and twists. It's kind of a slow burner at first, like with the first couple of episodes, but I felt like it still like drew me in. Oh, and before we continue, there are going to be spoilers.
Yeah, a lot of spoilers. So,
in this episode.
So if you haven't watched it, then we recommend that you go
definitely
and watch it, and or not.
I mean, it's up to you.
It's up to you. You can feel free to listen to us
and
talk
then
about
watch it. Yeah.
I gotta say, even if somebody told me everything that happened in this show, I would still watch it.
Yeah.
I would still watch it, spoilers and all.
I'd want to see it for myself. Yeah.
Right.
So, kind of a slow burner starting off there. This was definitely like kind of like a sci-fi, horror, fantasy.
Definitely all the elements of all of them.
Yeah. And we're kind of following the story of a guy who lives by himself. His name is Dan. And he basically restores old cassettes and like VHS tapes and other film media, and he's hired by this guy Virgil, who owns this large like Fortune 500 company,
right?
And
he wants him to restore some tapes.
Yep, to restore some tapes.
Right up his alley.
Yeah, we come to find out that there are all kinds of mysteries embedded within these tapes. Right. And we just kind of go down a rabbit hole. Cults are involved, and like, we thought there are some elements of like demon worshiping and
basically in a show or a movie that you go in understanding it to be a sci-fi or a horror, and there's a guy restoring old VHS tapes. Just about all the things that you would expect to happen while he's restoring the VHS tapes, those things happen.
Yes, it doesn't help that he's like in a secluded compound where he's recording these tapes supposedly by himself. Yeah. So a lot of things happened throughout, but we'll let you go check it out. Right. We're not going to give you an in-depth review, but I gotta say I enjoyed the story. The story was unexpected. It turns out that everything culminates to the discovery of like another world.
Right. So at that point, it stops being a series that's all about this guy restoring these creepy old VHS tapes, and it becomes more about this other world. They described it as what, like in an adjacent world, or a
Yeah,
pocket
just
universe.
right. Yep. And this cult, like their desire to try to open up a doorway
Right.
to this other world where there's this being that lives there.
It's a great idea.
Not so much. I know.
It's
But
always a great idea, right?
yeah, I know, right?
It's gonna end well for these people.
Now, while not the best idea to try to open up a doorway to
Hmm.
another world where they know there's this entity that lives there, may not be good. While that's not the best thing to do, I do appreciate that they actually allowed us to have a glimpse into that world.
Yeah, that was cool.
Right. I
That was
was
cool.
curious to find out what it looks like and what it was like for the characters to be there. And I was really glad that they actually showed us what it was like. So that was pretty cool. Kind of took some of the mystery away from me there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I also liked that James Wan was involved.
Oh yeah.
James Wan is an executive producer
Mm-hmm.
on this. Now, I don't know how much of his decision making went into it, but I think I saw some of his elements there with the with I like to think that some of his decisions were in relation to the atmosphere
Okay.
of the show, because I did like the tone, the overall tone and setting
Yeah.
of it. I know some people find that stuff kind of boring, but yeah, I liked that aspect
No,
of
it
it.
helps to make the movie,
Right,
Yeah.
right. Like sometimes some things were kind of that tint to it, like a, kind of a bluish tint to it,
Mm-hmm.
and that just definitely reminded me of James Wan. There's always a creepy house or something creepy with a building or a house
Yeah.
when James Wan is involved.
Yep.
So you definitely have that there.
Yeah, that was a great addition.
Yeah.
No, for sure. The characters, like I really actually like the characters in this.
Yeah, they had good characters in this.
Yeah, good character development. I felt for the characters.
Definitely.
And I
Well, when
also
they weren't doing anything stupid.
yes.
Right.
Yeah, when they weren't doing anything stupid.
Yeah.
And I'll be talking about that in a little bit. But I love it when you get to kind of meet like a quirky cast of characters. And so I liked how we kind of got to know about the people in the Visser, and they all had like these eccentric personalities and whatnot, and very interesting to see them interacting with each other and with
Right.
Melody, who was another character that we're following through the story.
Melody is like the other main character.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
the other main, and you'll see what we mean when you watch it. So
Yeah.
basically, there's two main characters, and the narrative will switch between the two in order to drive the story forward.
Right, exactly.
And about the Visser, speaking of the Visser, there's interesting characters, but they all every last one of them at some point does something creepy, which would have been a major red flag
Right?
for me. I don't know how. So Melody is living in the Visser,
Mm-hmm.
and this apartment building, and called the Visser, and there's so many situations in which it really should have been a red flag to her to just move out.
Right. She almost did.
Right.
Or
yeah, she did.
Really,
Yeah,
she had opportunities too. And several opportunities. And this was one of the things I didn't care for, was some of the character decisions. She was there to try to find her mother, who had given her up for not really up for adoption. She's kind of abandoned her at a church.
Right.
And so she grew up without her mother, not knowing who she was. And she somehow acquired a letter, which kind of led her to the Visser, which was supposed to be her mother's last known address. Anyway, Melody is just so intent on finding her mother, even though the letter makes it clear that she does not want any contact with Melody. But Melody still goes to the Visser, still tries to find her mother. after all these strange occurrences are happening, seeing very interesting and odd worship services, I guess,
Right.
being held in the community center,
Rituals.
rituals, and yeah, just like the odd behavior of the residents too. It's like
Yeah.
she had opportunities to leave and she still chose to stay.
And then she finds out, surprise, surprise, all those people are in a cult together.
Yes.
It's just, now that part really, there's some parts in here that what happens is exactly what you expected to happen. I don't think it really takes away from the story, just because of the way that they do it. Is they tell the story really well. But I wasn't surprised to see all those residents as the cult members.
Oh, no.
They were also, even no matter what age they were, even young people. There's a kid in there and she's nice and everything, but then she says some creepy things where I'm thinking, hey, if I was her age, I would have thought that was creepy.
Right. But we have to remember that what was that? Her name was Jess. She grew up there. So that's really
Right.
all she's known. So she might not immediately think that some of those things are creepy.
But you know what I like about that is they kind of showed you that she looked like she knew something was wrong.
Yeah, now that
was
did
cool.
seem like,
And shout out to the actress playing that character.
Yeah.
Because she was really convincing. She did a good job at letting you know that she thought something was weird, even though she grew up in this cult.
Right. But then she would, kind of snap back into character and just believe the things that she had been told. She was still drinking the tea, which she knew because she was the one who was collecting it. She knew it was filled with the mold. Like she still wanted to hold this new world. She wanted to be strong enough to hold this new world
the
inside of her.
moldy tea. So in this series, everybody, all you listeners out there, in this series, there's a disgusting tea that has mold in it that the people in the cult all drink. It is disgusting. It's straight up. When we say mold, we mean just the straight up mold that sometimes grows on tiles and just.
But this is special mold because it grows in like a crop circle type of pattern. So
right. It grows in a pattern. And they think it has mystical properties.
Yes.
And so they're drinking it.
It's a sign of their devotion.
A sign of their devotion.
So to this entity.
That sounds creepy now. You know I don't like cults.
I know.
I don't like stories about cults.
And I do. So this was hilarious. And when it took that turn, I was like all for it. But yeah. So definitely the characters I liked. Mark. So I actually, and I feel like you felt this way as well, at some point during the season, it almost seemed like, is Mark in on this?
I thought that. I think I said that to you when we were watching it.
And I thought the same thing.
Is he kind of in on it? I still think he knows something.
I don't know. After the last episode, I feel like he's just as clueless as Dan. There was a point where you thought he might have been like a Baldung, one of the opposing factions.
The opposing faction. I thought he might be from there.
Yeah.
I think partially we both thought this because he is really knowledgeable.
Yeah.
He turns out to be knowledgeable, resourceful, and a really good friend to Dan.
Yeah, I love that he was such a good friend.
That he was a good friend to Dan. And when I saw that he had Dan's best interest, that's when I thought he was a Baldung.
Oh, okay, Baldung, yeah.
Baldung, yeah.
But it turns out it's looking like he's not. I know. It's looking like he's not, at least at this time. But I was glad that Dan had somebody because we also learned that Dan's family was burned in a fire. And it turns out that the reason he was burned was because of Melody's tapes. Melody had a connection to Dan's father. And if you watch the series, you know this. He was her professor at one time. and also her therapist. And she would,
and her mentor,
and kind of, yeah, like her mentor as well. They had a relationship, you know, like a teacher student mentorship relationship. And so Melody, once she started to discover all these different things happening at the Visser and how strange the people were, she was recording everything. And so she sent those tapes to Dan's father. This was when Dan was a little boy. Now, because the tapes were at Dan's house, the Baldung, we find out, actually set the fire to Dan's house to destroy the tapes, because the Baldung are opposed to the disciples of this entity.
They will prevent it by any means necessary.
Any means necessary. They don't want this door being open. They don't want this thing coming out of it. And so that's why the fire was set. And Dan doesn't have a family, so
because of them.
Yeah, because of them.
And his survival, we were told that his survival was completely by accident. So that was one thing that I liked about the series, because most series, they'll try to give you something where, you know, it's just too black and white, where it's just, you got the good guys and you got the bad guys.
Yeah.
But with this one, they made it, they did a good job at making things very complex, because you have one cult that is presented to you as they're just pure evil. We see them killing people in rituals, but on the other hand, you have the other faction who they all the while they present themselves as good, they will do terrible things for what they feel is the better outcome. So the Baldung, they're presented as good, but they're willing to burn a house down with a family in it, with families in it, in order to keep this being from entering the world. So that's going to, with Dan having that information, that's going to create an interesting dynamic for the next season.
Right.
Because now he has that information, and so he's not going to really want to have anything to do with these people.
No.
From what we know from Dan, Dan already, so a little bit of information on Dan. Dan's not very trusting of people. Like that's clear in the series, as several times within the series, somebody might do something for Dan, and he just seems like he just thinks that there's always a catch. Even his friend Mark, which is what his best friend. I would say his, but he should be. Should be his best friend. They've known
each other for a long time.
Right. He even has trouble at some point trusting him, until Mark, basically in his own way, lets him know, like, no, I'm your friend for real, and I'm trying to help you.
Right.
And so I thought, but I did think that it was interesting that they made that they were able to create. I thought it was cool that they were able to create that type of dynamic between, you have the cult versus that other faction.
Right.
And they both do terrible things, and you have the regular normal people like Mark and Dan and Melody are caught in between it.
Right.
Like in the middle of it.
I like that aspect of it. We also learned that Melody is actually a Baldung by, birth, because her mother was a Baldung, who we see in the final episode. She actually helps Melody. She actually helps open the doorway, because Melody was trapped in the other world, and she's able to hold open the door so that Dan can rescue Melody, but then he gets trapped. And now, one of the things that I did not care for was this entity, because we got glimpse of the entity in the videos that Dan was he was restoring. So we would see the entities like form its shape within like the static of the tapes and whatnot, protruding a bit out of the monitor. And I'm sorry, the entity looked like an alien. And for the
Right.
longest time, I thought we were dealing with aliens. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they think they're worshiping like this like mystic creature or this, spiritual being. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's aliens.
I think you feeling that way was intentional. I think they because they put in the thing about the comet.
Yeah, because there's a comet. They could only open the doorway when this comet was close, or as we saw in the final episode, if you have like pieces of of a comet, near enough to the area, then it can kind of help it open.
Right.
But I thought for sure we were dealing with aliens. When we watched footage of the first time they were opening the door back in the 20s, the 1920s.
The 1920s, yeah.
Wow. I said the 20s. It's like, oh my gosh, we're in the 20s right now. Oh man. Okay. 100 years ago, in the 1920s, when they opened the door for the first time on film, there was this beam of light that came down, and I'm like, oh my God, it's a tractor beam. That's what it is.
It's aliens. They're going to be abducted.
Yes, they're going to take them to their ship. And that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But it was interesting trying to find out where the story was heading. So I actually liked that added mystery.
It kept us guessing.
Yes.
It kept us guessing. Is it a demon or is it some type of spirit thing, or is it aliens and we don't really know what this thing is.
No.
Because they're talking about a completely different world, and one character described that world as being uninhabitable by humans,
right,
or something.
But as we could see, Melody was somehow able to inhabit it and stay alive for, was it like 16 years,
right?
So I don't know.
And she didn't age at all.
She didn't age. But there's still a lot to learn, because in the final episode, we see that Dan actually was transported back to 94, where he actually existed as a boy during that time.
Right. He would have been a child during that time.
So still a lot to learn. I got to say, we talked about some of Melody's decisions. Dan. I am so sorry. Right. I get it that, this was really eye-opening for him, going through these tapes, finding out his father's involved, not having known that. Virgil, who hired him, he didn't tell Dan that his father was involved in any way. His family paid the price because of his father's involvement. Right. And so, all of this is being revealed to Dan over the course of these weeks as he's going through these tapes. So he becomes more and more invested and wants to find out what exactly his father was doing and how he ties into all this. So he starts investigating further and further and further into these tapes, investigating the compound where he is. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, Dan, if you don't pack your bags, no. First of all, if you don't finish just restoring these tapes, and collect your $100,000, because that was what he was being offered, and leave. Because I am so sorry. As curious as I would probably be in a situation as that, I can only imagine. There was too much involved.
Way too much involved, and it would have, for me, it would have just become an interesting story that I told people at dinner parties after collecting my $100,000 for restoring the tapes. He dug in way too deep for that. It's I guess the thing that's good about it is because he was able to rescue Melody. But now he's stuck in 1994.
But it's like he was going down dark hallways. He was breaking down walls in the compound and smashing glass to try to get access to rooms. He was going into sub-basements. Like he was down the lower
areas that he was not supposed to be in.
He discovered a hatch in the floor in the basement underneath one of the filing cabinets that he knocked over. I'm like, oh my gosh, don't go down there. And what does he do? He goes down there.
He goes down.
It's like, I'm sorry. No, no, no. That would not have been me. And he's been seeing glimpses of this thing and
glimpses of the entity.
Yeah, in the tape.
In the tapes. Now that brings me to another thing about the story that I didn't really care for.
Yeah.
Well, not the story, but just this is a visual issue, and it's not a huge one. The CGI for the entity that we catch glimpses of.
Yes.
The CGI sometimes really wasn't good.
I meant to say that. Yes. My God.
They did this thing where it looked like the entity was coming out of the monitor, the computer monitor that he was looking at, and just the CGI, it looked like something from the early 2000s.
It definitely looked like something from like Sci-Fi Channel.
Right.
No shade to the Sci-Fi Channel, although it's not what it used to be in the 90s, gotta say. But
yeah, we gotta
do better, Sci-Fi.
Gotta do better.
But yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of took the scary, it took any scare factor for me. They took it right out of it.
Me too.
It just had me laughing at a part that I'm sure was not supposed to be the part where we're laughing.
Yeah.
And it's too bad because what I liked, another thing I liked was just the comedic parts of the show. There were parts where things that people said were definitely funny, and we'll let you see that for yourself. But yeah, the CGI needed work.
Yeah, it really did. I don't understand that decision, because I feel like anyone watching that would be like, this isn't really scary.
It's just funny.
It's weird, and I'm sure the character is disturbed because why not?
Yeah.
But for us viewers, it didn't look scary. I will say, when they finally show the entity in its full glory,
there's nothing funny about
in the other world, it looked creepy. It looked kind of creepy.
It was creepy, yeah.
Still, you could tell it was like CGI. Like,
you could, but it at least did a good job at being intimidating.
Yeah.
Because there have been times where I've been disappointed by the main being. For example, from The Nun. Yeah. The trailers made The Nun seem like it was just this really. But how many people did she even kill? Like, what was her body count? She proved to not be as scary as we thought. People literally got away from her by just running.
Yeah.
And so here though, we got to see the entity actually look scary. There's people willing to burn down homes and apartment buildings with innocent people inside just to get away from this entity. So they did a good job at making sure it was a legitimate threat.
Look, yeah, I do still wish though it was done like more practical effects and not just total
effects
CGI.
Are always
for me
better.
It would have looked creepier. However, the fact that it has control over that world and can make you see whatever it wants you to see was very creepy to me.
You know what? About the practical effects, that would have been a really good payoff.
Yeah.
If we could have seen, and I mean, we're talking textures.
Exactly.
And things like that.
CGI, or at least that CGI, did not successfully render. So that would have been really cool.
It would have been nice for like a big reveal, and just really, it would have been cool for it to just go full on horror at that point too. Like maybe show it just really do somebody in, just show the audience that it's not messing around.
Yeah.
That would have been a really good payoff.
I would have loved that.
Right.
Yeah. Another thing I didn't really care for was the priest dying. I feel like I'm okay with the choice for the show. I'm just sad that he died, though. He was a good guy, you know. He was actually trying to help. He knew there was something wrong with the Visser
Right.
and the people there, and he was trying to help Jess. And you know, it went south for him. Of course, we know the leaders of the cult got to him and
Right.
took him out. But yeah, I was sorry to see that.
Yeah, that was, I understood that they did that to, move the story forward, because the circumstances surrounding his death were very suspicious, and Melody picked up on it immediately.
Right.
And now I really liked that. I liked that Melody wasn't just, Melody wasn't that dumb. Because sometimes in movies and shows, a person will be killed because they know too much, and everybody just carries on like, oh, I can't believe Roger died. Like, oh my goodness, I can't believe he's dead. And nobody thinks about the fact that Roger got killed after investigating why people are going missing at the coffee shop.
Right, exactly.
and so Melody's not dumb here. Melody immediately realizes that the priest dies after trying to exorcise a demon out of the girl, and after basically spilling the beans to Melody that the Visser is evil and she needs to leave that place. And then he dies like a day later?
Yeah, he died. Like the next day we find out he's dead, I think, is the next day.
In almost any other movie or show, it would have taken them all season to realize that something doesn't seem right about that. So I enjoyed that we had protagonists that were a little bit smarter than the average sci-fi horror thing, except for the part about going down long dark hallways,
or staying in a creepy building filled with cult members, like
by yourself, making friends with rats.
Yeah,
that was actually an aspect of it that I liked. That he literally made friends with the rat.
Oh,
this guy, he fed it and talked to it.
He did. Now, the main character, I have never seen him in anything before. His acting was interesting to me. It was very subtle, like his performance. Right. And it kind of grew on me. I wasn't expecting that. But he really held back a lot with his delivery and just the way he allowed his character to be portrayed. And I don't know if that had to do mostly with the directing or if it was his decision, but it was very interesting, especially considering how slow the show took off.
Like you said, it was a slow burner.
It was a slow burner, yeah. But I feel like it was probably a good choice because when the show picked up, it really picked up. And even his emotion and whatnot and his delivery became more, I guess there was more energy behind it and whatnot as the show picked up. So I thought that was interesting. Very interesting. I liked the scenes where we were transported in time to the 1920s. We were introduced to characters then who had originally tried to open the door on film. And so I thought that was very interesting. I always like it when we can kind of get a little history lesson on what got us to this point, especially when we're talking about something that spans decades really not even just decades, but I mean, this thing is ancient and these factions are pretty ancient as well. It looks like the Baldung were around hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And same thing for the disciples of this entity.
And the story was interesting on its own. Even if you thought of it, even when you think of it as a separate series to the main series, it holds up pretty well.
I'd totally watch that.
I definitely would. I'm glad that we didn't have to sit through an entire series of it. or something like that. I'm glad that they were able to get to the point. Really,
I'd watch
really
a series.
quickly.
I'd watch an entire series of that, just them in the 1920s. I thought that was really interesting.
I think it's because I'm thinking about it in the way of, we just saw this season.
Okay, well,
we just saw this season and they already explained it.
Okay, gotcha.
But however, if the way we were presented to Archive 81 was that, oh, that would have been cool.
What?
If the way Archive 81 started instead was it showed him restoring these films, and then it just immediately took us straight to the 1920s.
Oh, that actually would have been pretty cool.
That would have been pretty cool. And then the 1920s was the first season.
Okay.
And then we okay, yeah. So because I'm trying to get into the mind of, I'm trying to get into your mind right now with what you were talking about, like the 1920s being its own series there. So yeah, that is cool. And that episode was a really good payoff.
It was.
Because we were listening to people just go on and on about all these secrets and secret societies and things, and now they finally just show us, instead of just having other characters tell us about what happened. So I really enjoyed that. And the characters during that time, they were all really interesting. Yeah. And we only got to see them for a little bit, but they were all I had fun watching that episode.
I did too.
I had fun watching that. It was really interesting.
Yeah. Oh, what a time to be alive when you can just stream a show and watch it in just a few days.
Just a few days.
No more waiting week after week after week, trying to make sure that you're home at the perfect time to tune in and watch the show. You're able to just watch these shows at your leisure, one by one, back to back. So.
But that still has an appeal to me.
It does.
Yeah, I mean, just like your favorite show.
It's nostalgic. I think it's nostalgic.
Sure. That's what I liked about Dexter New Blood.
Yeah.
Was having to be there to get the new episode.
I did not.
You did not
because I wanted to see it. I wanted to watch all of it in like one sitting.
And judging and to prove my point, judging by the way that series ended, I'm glad that I didn't just binge watch it all just to be disappointed. Yeah. I was able to take in the good parts and the bad parts.
So. You have a point because that last episode was trash. But back to this series, I'm glad we were able to kind of binge watch it because I did want to find out what would happen next, right? Without having to wait. And so, I basically enjoyed it, and I feel like Netflix can keep on pumping out more seasons of this show. They can keep pumping out more series.
Yeah, keep it up.
Similar to this as well. I love the sci-fi horror, obviously.
Right,
obviously, we love the sci-fi and horror aspect of the show. So
you hear that, Netflix, if you're listening, to any Netflix executives, if you're listening, as far as Archive 81 is concerned, if you're selling, we're buying.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, on that note, did you have anything else to add?
I had fun watching this series. Just some final thoughts on Dan. At first, it really wasn't doing it for me. I thought the character was a little bit boring at first, but then I realized that he's playing the part of a very disturbed young man who had a mental breakdown some years earlier. And I thought it was really cool to show when he finally he gets so angry, and we see this man who's usually really measured and controlled just really lose it and get enraged as things intensify. There's parts of his personal life and family life being brought up by this shady organization, and so it was like you said, it was a slow burner, but it really had some good payoffs in there.
It did.
So
creepy parts too. Like it actually, the creep factor was there.
Definitely all the horror elements are in
as
there.
cheesy as the entity looked in the glimpses that we got in the videos.
Right.
There is still some creep factor there at other times within the series. So
yeah, I don't care how tough anybody thinks they are. If you saw anything like that in real life, you'd be scared. So that's that they did a good job of that. So I guess what do you say? Does it flop or not?
Oh, not for sure. I enjoyed it. I did. Yeah. I would say this is a not. And if you haven't seen it, go check it out. What do you think?
It didn't flop.
Yeah.
So it's not. It's not a flop for me. I had a lot of fun with it. Just blow through it like we did.
Yeah.
So that's all we have for tonight.
Yep, that's it. But as always, if you have any questions for us, if you have any suggestions for reviews or anything you'd like for us to discuss, feel free to contact us. You can reach us at neversleepagainreviews@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and we're also on YouTube, where you can find weekly horror and sci-fi movie reviews and more. So feel free to check us out there as well.
Well, that's all the time we have for tonight. We thank you for listening with us. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Veronica.
And you have been listening to
The Theremin Chronicles.